courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled, and cameras lined the back of the room. This wasn't just any trial, it was a spectacle. At the center of it all was Oprah Winfrey, a media icon, a billionaire, a household name. But today, she wasn't the one asking the questions. She was the one being questioned. Opposite her stood Robert Calloway, a ruthless lawyer with a reputation for tearing people apart. He was feared in the legal world, known for humiliating witnesses, twisting words, and winning cases by sheer intimidation. The case itself was already making headlines. A major company had accused Oprah of defamation, claiming she damaged their reputation in an interview. She denied it, insisting she had only spoken the truth. But Calloway didn't care about truth. He cared about winning. He saw this case as an opportunity, not just to defeat Oprah, but to humiliate her, to make a statement, to prove that even one of the most powerful women in the world was no match for him. What he didn't realize was that today, in this courtroom, he was about to meet his match. Robert Calloway wasn't just any lawyer. He was the lawyer. The one people called when they wanted to destroy their opponent in court. His reputation was built on fear. Judges barely tolerated him, and fellow attorneys despised him. But clients? They loved him, because he won. And he didn't just win, he crushed his opponents. His tactics were brutal. He would twist words, manipulate emotions, and push witnesses to their breaking point. He saw hesitation as weakness, tears as victory. His cross-examinations were like interrogations, designed to humiliate and control. It wasn't just strategy, it was personal. He enjoyed watching people squirm. He thrived on dominance. And today, standing across from Oprah Winfrey, he felt invincible. He had taken down CEOs, politicians, and celebrities before. He had humiliated people in ways they never recovered from. To him, Oprah was just another target, another name on his long list of courtroom victims. As the judge called the session to order, Calloway smirked. He had been waiting for this moment. In his mind, this wasn't a trial. This was a show. And he was about to put on his best performance yet. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't see, was that this would be the day everything changed. This would be the day Robert Calloway finally lost. The lawsuit had been making headlines for weeks. A major company had accused Oprah of defamation. According to them, a comment she made during an interview had destroyed their reputation, cost them millions, and turned the public against them. Their claim? Oprah had spread false information about their business. They insisted her words were reckless, harmful, and damaging. But Oprah? She stood by everything she said. She argued that she had only spoken the truth, that the company had been involved in shady practices, and the public deserved to know. And now, here they were. In court, Robert Calloway, the company's lawyer, saw this as the perfect opportunity. It wasn't just about the case, it was about him, about proving his power, about breaking one of the most powerful women in the world. As he stood, adjusting his suit, he was already planning his attack. His strategy was simple: make Oprah look unreliable, make her doubt herself, make her crack. The more pressure he applied, the weaker she would become. And once she stumbled, he would tear her apart. He had done it before. He would do it again. The judge signaled for opening statements to begin. Oprah's team spoke first. They calmly laid out their defense, presenting facts, evidence, and witnesses. It was strong, logical, and convincing. But Calloway wasn't interested in logic. He wasn't interested in evidence. He was interested in winning. And when he finally stood to speak, there was only one thing on his mind: humiliation. He turned to Oprah, smiled slightly, and said in a cold, cutting voice, "Let's talk about the truth, shall we?" The battle had officially begun. Calloway took his time. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and walked slowly toward the witness stand. He wanted everyone to feel his presence. Then, he looked at Oprah. Not just looked, studied her. "This won't take long," he said with a smirk. His voice dripped with confidence. He had done this 1,000 times before. Break them down, pick them apart, make them doubt themselves. Oprah remained calm. She sat upright, hands folded, eyes steady. She wasn't rattled. Not yet. Calloway circled her like a predator. "You're a very powerful woman, aren't you?" he asked. Oprah didn't blink. "I like to think I've worked hard for my success," Calloway smirked. "Oh, I'm sure you do, and with that power comes influence. Would you agree?" She nodded. "Yes." "Influence over millions of people?" "Yes." Calloway sighed dramatically, shaking his head. That's a lot of responsibility, because when you say something, people believe you, whether it's true or not. The courtroom murmured. Oprah's lawyer objected. Argumentative. The judge raised an eyebrow but allowed Calloway to continue. He turned back to Oprah, his voice sharper. Did you think about that before you spoke? Before you decided to ruin a company's reputation? Oprah took a breath. I stated facts. Calloway chuckled, mocking her. Facts? He repeated. Are you sure? Or did you just want to play the hero? His tone was ruthless. He wasn't just questioning her, he was attacking her credibility. Oprah's team objected again. This time, the judge issued a warning, but Calloway ignored it. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for her. They can't protect you forever. He expected fear, panic, a sign of weakness. But Oprah didn't flinch. She stared back, unmoved. For the first time, Calloway felt something shift. Something was wrong. She wasn't breaking, and he was about to make a mistake that would cost him everything. The courtroom was silent. Calloway had been in control the entire time, at least that's what he thought. But something was off. Oprah wasn't breaking, she wasn't flustered, nervous, or intimidated. She sat there calm, unshaken, and that bothered him. He needed to push harder. He turned back to his notes, flipping through them dramatically. Then he looked up and smirked. Let's talk about the so-called truth you claim to know. Oprah waited. Calloway's voice grew sharper. You stated that this company engaged in unethical business practices. That's quite the accusation, isn't it? Oprah nodded. It's a fact. Calloway chuckled, shaking his head. A fact? Where's your proof? Did you see it yourself? Oprah didn't hesitate. Yes. The courtroom stirred. Calloway's smile faded slightly, but he recovered. Oh, and I suppose you have evidence to back that up? Oprah's lawyer stood. Actually, we do. A folder was placed on the table. Calloway's smirk disappeared. Oprah's team had been quiet until now. Too quiet. But this was a trap. Her lawyer opened the folder and slid a document forward. Sworn testimonies, financial records, emails, all proving that the company tried to cover up their actions. The courtroom gasped. Calloway's face twitched. He hadn't seen this coming. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Calloway, did your client disclose this information to you? Calloway's throat tightened. Your Honor, but before he could finish, Oprah's lawyer added, there's more. Another file. Another piece of evidence. And just like that, Calloway lost control. The same arrogance that made him powerful had blinded him. He had underestimated Oprah, and now, he was trapped. For the first time in his career, Robert Calloway had nothing to say. The courtroom was frozen in silence. Calloway's confidence had vanished, his arrogance, his smug attitude, gone. He reached for his notes, flipping through them frantically, searching for something, anything, that could save him. But there was nothing. He had lost control. Oprah's legal team remained composed. They didn't gloat, they didn't smirk, they didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The judge sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing his temples. He had seen enough. Mr. Calloway, he said firmly, approach the bench. Calloway swallowed hard and stood. His steps weren't as confident as before. He knew what was coming. The judge folded his hands. I have been patient. I have tolerated your aggressive tactics, your repeated interruptions, and your blatant disrespect. Calloway clenched his jaw. But today, the judge continued, you crossed the line. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge leaned forward, his voice sharp. You mocked a witness. You ignored my warnings, and now it appears your case is built on false claims. Calloway opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand. Don't. The weight of those words hit Calloway like a punch to the chest. The judge exhaled. This court has no room for lawyers who rely on intimidation rather than integrity. Calloway's hands trembled. He had been in difficult situations before, but this was different. This wasn't just a loss. This was a public humiliation. The judge turned to Oprah's team. The court finds no credible evidence of defamation. The case is dismissed. A wave of whispers filled the room. Oprah remained calm, just as she had been the entire trial. She nodded respectfully. She had never needed to fight back. The truth had fought for her. The judge wasn't done. He looked back at Calloway. As for you, Mr. Calloway, the lawyer stiffened. We will now discuss disciplinary action. The color drained from Calloway's face. This was far from over. Calloway's breathing grew unsteady. Disciplinary action. The words echoed in his head, louder than anything else in the courtroom. He had come in expecting victory. Instead, he was standing on the edge of ruin. The judge's expression remained firm. Your behavior today was unacceptable. This court is not a stage for personal attacks nor a battleground for your ego. Calloway swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room on him. The once feared lawyer, now exposed. The judge continued. Effective immediately, I am imposing sanctions against you for professional misconduct. Murmurs spread across the courtroom like wildfire. Calloway's chest tightened. Your Honor, Silence. The judge's voice cut through him like a blade. You have built your career on intimidation and humiliation. Today that ends. Calloway's fingers curled into fists. He had never been in this position before, never been powerless. The judge leaned back in his chair. You are fined for contempt of court. Furthermore, I am recommending a review of your conduct by the state bar. The gasps were louder this time. A bar review. Calloway's career was no longer just damaged, it was at risk of being destroyed. He shook his head, his voice almost desperate. This is absurd. I was doing my job. The judge wasn't moved. Your job is to uphold justice, not to tear people down. The silence was suffocating. Calloway's usual confidence, his arrogance, his power, all of it had been stripped away. His reputation was shattered. For years, he had made others feel small. He had pushed them, mocked them, broken them. And now, standing alone before the judge, before the courtroom, before Oprah Winfrey, he finally understood what that felt like. But it was too late. The verdict had been given. And Robert Calloway was finished. Calloway stood frozen. His mind raced, but there was nothing he could say, nothing he could do. His hands trembled, his mouth felt dry. The weight of the judge's words crushed him. This wasn't just a loss, this was humiliation. His entire career, he had built himself up as the man who never lost. The lawyer who could tear apart anyone who stood in his way. But today, he was the one in pieces. His breathing grew uneven. His vision blurred. He wiped his face quickly, trying to compose himself. But everyone saw it. The redness in his eyes, the slight quiver in his jaw. The ruthless, arrogant Robert Calloway was on the verge of tears. People in the courtroom stared in shock. Some whispered. Others just watched, stunned. He tried to speak, to defend himself, to regain control, but no words came out. The judge had already moved on. Oprah's team had already packed their things, the trial was over. And yet Calloway stood there, alone. For the first time, he felt what it was like to be powerless, what it was like to be on the receiving end of the kind of treatment he had inflicted on others. His reputation was gone, his future was uncertain, and no one, not the judge, not Oprah, not the public, felt sorry for him. Robert Calloway had finally met justice. And it broke him.